What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going over 10 reasons why Tobey Maguire was the best Spider-Man. After reading the title of the video, I know that you guys probably think that I'm only saying this because of nostalgia or that I'm crazy for choosing Tobey over Andrew and Tom. But before you click that dislike button, leave a negative comment or unsubscribe from the channel, please hear me out. Rather than simply stating which actor I think gave the best performance as Spider-Man, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide if you prefer Tobey, Andrew, or Tom. This is going to be a 3-part video, and each video will provide you guys with 10 different reasons why each actor was a great Spider-Man. The videos will be released in order, beginning with Tobey, then Andrew, and lastly Tom. Once you finish watching all 3 videos, please leave a comment below telling me who you think was the best Spider-Man. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to the list with number 10, organic webbing. Besides debating about which actor did a better job at portraying Spider-Man, many fans debate whether this iconic superhero should have had web shooters or organic webbing. If you were to speak to hardcore Spider-Man fans, they would most likely choose web shooters over organic webbing because in the comics, he had to invent his webs instead of simply being gifted with them. Stan Lee explained that he wanted to highlight Peter's intelligence by showing him experimenting with a variety of chemicals so he could create his own synthetic webbing. You're probably wondering how organic webbing made it on the list, especially since it shows that Raimi, the director of the Spider-Man trilogy, was willing to change a major detail from the comics. Well, having webs come out of Spider-Man's wrist easily could have looked ridiculous, but it somehow managed to work. If getting bitten by a spider magically gives you super strength and the ability to crawl walls, it doesn't seem far-fetched to believe that it would also give you the power of shooting webs out of your wrist. Also, the organic webbing enhanced the storyline in Spider-Man 2 when Spider-Man was extremely stressed out because he couldn't balance his normal life and his superhero life. He lost all of his powers, including his webs. Andrew and Tom's Spider-Man would still have their web shooters if they found themselves in a similar situation, but Tobey's Spider-Man had absolutely nothing. There was even that one moment when he ran inside of a building that was on fire and saved a girl's life, proving that he doesn't need his webs or any other power to be a hero. Number 9, he made his own suit. Overall, Tom Holland receives a lot of praise for pulling off a strong performance as a teenage Spider-Man. But if there's one thing people complain about, it's the fact that he didn't have to actually create his own suit. He may have worn his homemade suit during the final battle scene with Vulture, but he never got the chance to make his regular suit, nor was he involved in the process of making the Iron Suit. The MCU kind of just skipped the entire part of Spider-Man struggling to make his suit and instead just showed Iron Man giving him one in Civil War. Though the general audience didn't view this as a big deal, hardcore fans were probably a little annoyed because the Spider-Man they love in the comics originally sewed his own suit. Those fans would be happy to know that Tobey's Spider-Man was capable of designing and creating his own suit, which not only showed that he was intelligent and artistic, but it also underlined his independence. Instead of simply relying on someone else to make him the suit the way that Tom's Spider-Man relied on Iron Man, he took matters into his own hands and designed multiple Spider-Man suits until he finally landed the perfect one. Number 8, the relationship between Spider-Man and MJ. A Spider-Man movie without MJ is equivalent to a Superman movie without Lois Lane, an Iron Man movie without Pepper Potts, a Flash movie without Iris West, and an Aquaman movie without Mera. No, Peter does not need to be with MJ in order to be an interesting character, but I do believe that a Spider-Man movie feels incomplete without her since she has played such a significant role in his life throughout the comics. Unfortunately, The Amazing Spider-Man was never given a third movie, which was supposed to introduce MJ. As for the MCU, Zendaya plays a character named MJ, but Michelle Jones is definitely not Mary Jane Watson. What made Spider-Man's relationship with MJ special in the Raimi trilogy is that it showcased his willingness to make sacrifices in order to protect those that he loves the most. In the first Spider-Man, Peter would have done anything to be with MJ, including signing up for a wrestling match just so he could buy a car and impress her. When he finally got the woman he's been chasing for such a long time, he let her go because he knew that it wasn't safe for her to be around with him. If his villains found out that Spider-Man had a close relationship with MJ, then all of his enemies would automatically become her enemies. I know that this is a comic superhero trope, but what makes it so effective is the fact that most people would do the exact same thing if they were in Peter's shoes. Also, MJ strengthened Spider-Man as a character because many fans felt bad for him as he had to watch the love of his life get engaged to another guy in the second movie. Number 7, the death of Uncle Ben. You know how everyone is sick and tired of watching a young Bruce Wayne lose his parents by a robber who gunned them down? As annoying as it may be to constantly see their death scene, it's important to understand that this was the moment that pushed Bruce to become Batman and seek revenge against those that take away innocent lives. In many ways, the death of the Waynes is extremely similar to the death of Uncle Ben. Nobody wanted to watch another Spider-Man origin story, which is why the MCU decided to skip the part where Peter lost his uncle and instead briefly mentioned it in one scene. Most people are familiar with Spider-Man's origin, so it's easy to understand why the MCU chose to gloss over Uncle Ben's death, but it does feel a little disappointing when you realize just how important that moment truly is. In Tobey's case, fans had an emotional connection to his Spider-Man because they watched one of their favorite superheroes feel guilty for not stopping the guy who killed his uncle. The death of Uncle Ben served as Peter's main motivation to put on a suit every day and help those in need, despite how emotionally and physically draining being a superhero can be. The moment was pivotal to Spider-Man's life because it taught him a valuable lesson that can be summed up in one quote: "With great power comes great responsibility." That quote may sound a little corny, but it helps the audience better understand why Spider-Man believes that he must use his powers for the greater good. Leaving Uncle Ben out of a Spider-Man movie can potentially make the audience feel like they're missing out on a big part of Peter's life because they don't see what made him want to become a superhero in the first place. Number 6. Adult Spider-Man with responsibilities. Peter started out as a high school student in the Raimi trilogy, which just didn't work at all because there was absolutely no way they could convince people that Tobey, Kirsten, and James were teenagers. Fortunately, the first movie showed Peter, MJ, and Harry graduating high school. Spider-Man 2 perfectly captured how fast your life can spiral downhill once you face the responsibilities of being an adult. He had to get a part-time job delivering pizza, which didn't last long because his duties as Spider-Man kept distracting him from his work life. When he went to his apartment, he had to hide from his landlord because he knew that he would get yelled at for being 2 months behind with his rents. You know, Peter's life was pretty bad when his only source of income came from a guy who underpaid him for pictures of Spider-Man and constantly called him a menace. To make matters even worse, his professor, Dr. Connors, claimed that he would have failed him if he continued to skip class and postpone his paper. By giving Peter adult responsibilities, fans were able to relate to him because many of them know how it feels to be broke, have a terrible boss, and do poorly in school. When we look at Tobey's Spider-Man, we can't help but see ourselves. He struggled to balance his normal life and his superhero life the exact same way everyone has a difficult time balancing their work life, school life, and social life. Number 5. Tobey's Spider-Man changed the superhero genre. X-Men deserves all the credit in the world for being the first movie to kickstart the superhero boom, but sometimes people forget just how important the Spider-Man trilogy was to the superhero genre. In the 1970s, people made TV films about Spider-Man, but they were unsuccessful for the most part because they just didn't have a big enough budget to showcase all of his cool abilities. A big budgeted Spider-Man movie was caught in development hell for 25 years, causing people to believe that it was impossible to make a really good film for the superhero. When Raimi finally got his hands on Spider-Man, he proved that filmmakers can create a Spider-Man film that's not just a good superhero movie, but a good movie period. Tobey's Spider-Man played a crucial role in the superhero genre because he helped people take superhero movies more seriously as they were beginning to realize just how much potential these movies had. Don't get me wrong, there are a good amount of amazing superhero movies before Spider-Man, but there were also quite a few bad ones. I mean, how can anyone take a comic book movie seriously when Batman and Robin showed one of the darkest superheroes of all time use a Bat credit card? Thankfully, Spider-Man along with the X-Men franchise paved the way for other superhero movies and proved that they can be just as great as movies from different genres. Number 4, Tobey's Peter Parker was a believable dork. One of the biggest complaints people had with Andrew's Spider-Man is that they felt like they were trying way too hard to make him look like a nerd and it just wasn't working. Some people took it a step further by claiming that he acted more like a bully than a nerd when he violated Flash's life while they were playing basketball, but that's a story for another day. Tom's Spider-Man is also supposed to be uncool, but sometimes it can feel a little questionable considering that the guy who bullies him doesn't seem intimidating and uses phrases such as penis Parker. Then we have Tobey Spider-Man, who represents a classic nerd archetype. Big glasses, super clumsy, bad at speaking to women, and victimized by jocks like Flash. Within the first few minutes of the first Spider-Man movie, everyone was already treating Peter like dirt. he missed the bus and had to chase after it. So what does everyone do? They laugh like there's no tomorrow. Heck, even the bus driver got a kick out of Peter's misery. There was also that scene in Spider-Man 2 where Peter tried to deliver pizza on time, but was slowed down by a bunch of brooms falling out of the closet, and he had to quickly shove them back in. That right there made the audience relate to Peter even more than they previously did, because all of us know how it feels to be in a super awkward situation. Number 3, he had the best supporting characters. Nowadays, many superhero movies spend a lot of time developing the main character, as they should be doing, but they sometimes underestimate the importance of having a strong supporting cast. Not only do supporting characters advance the plot and heighten the conflict, but they also strengthen the main character through their interactions. Although Andrew and Tom didn't have a weak supporting cast, they definitely had to do some heavy lifting for their movies. Tobey's Spider-Man, however, was extremely lucky because the supporting characters helped make him more interesting than he already was. Kirsten Dunst got a lot of hate for her portrayal of Mary Jane, but I think she did a pretty solid job at bringing that character to life. Not to mention that Raimi actually took the time to explore her story by showing her pursuing an acting career and secretly working as a waitress so she could escape from her abusive, alcoholic father. Then we have James Franco, who also does a pretty good job at portraying Harry Osborn, mostly because we truly felt his pain when his father liked Peter more than he liked his own son. Rosemary Harris killed it as Aunt May, and don't even get me started with the legend J.K. Simmons. I literally couldn't have pictured a more perfect J. Jonah Jameson. Even these super minor characters were awesome, like the girl who kept singing the Spider-Man theme with her violin, and that security guard who didn't allow Peter to watch MJ's play. Number 2, he had the best villains. The Raimi trilogy reminds everyone why Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery is just as amazing as Batman's Rogues Gallery. After watching so many comic book movies throughout the years, I think we can all agree that a villain can make a hero even more likable because their evilness is what makes us root for the hero to win in the end. I mean, just look at Infinity War and Endgame. We hated Thanos so much that our love for the superheroes just grew 10 times stronger. Many superhero movies have a difficult time establishing their villains, but that wasn't the case with Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. William Dafoe didn't just have the best villain performance in a Spider-Man movie, but he had one of the best villain performances in all superhero movies. Dafoe is such a talented actor that he not only made us look past the ridiculous costume, but he also pulled off corny lines such as, "We'll meet again, Spider-Man." The Green Goblin also improved Peter as a character because he taught him that if he continues to be Spider-Man, the people he loves most will suffer. Then we had Alfred Molina as Octavius, who was very well written and had awesome effects, especially for a movie that was released in 2004. He was the perfect contrast to Peter because his failures come from him wanting it all: the fame, the love, and success. Spider-Man's failures, on the other hand, came from realizing that he had to make sacrifices because he understood that he couldn't have it all. Even Spider-Man 3, which got a lot of criticism for having way too many villains, contained a brilliant performance from Thomas Hayden Church as the sympathetic Sandman. And number 1, amazing character development. This reason can be attributed to all 3 actors, but I'm specifically going to use it for Tobey Spider-Man since he had 3 movies, while Andrew had 2 and Tom only had 1 so far. In the first Spider-Man movie, Peter didn't stop a robber because he was angry at the owner of the wrestling company for only paying him $100 instead of $3,000. He later found out that he made a massive mistake because that guy was responsible for the death of his uncle. This was a turning point for Peter because he was granted extraordinary abilities and had the power to easily stop the robber, yet he chose not to. As corny as it sounds, this was the moment when Peter realized that he was given the powers for a reason, and it was his responsibility to protect innocent people. Peter's development can be seen when you examine how he went from not caring if a man got robbed to running inside of a building on fire even though he didn't have any powers at the time. Throughout the trilogy, we see Spider-Man develop as he gained confidence in the first film, learned how to balance his personal life and superhero life in the second film, and explored his darker side in the third film. And that is it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Follow me on Twitter at Valenplana, and I'll see you all in the next video.